God bless your wonderful hearts, and welcome back to part 2 of what I entitled The True Natures of the Two Spiritual Powers. I'd like for you to turn to Ephesians 6, that's where we're going to start. But before we get into that, I'd like to go over briefly what we covered in part 1, where we went to John 1:18, where it says that Jesus is in the bosom of the Father and that He declared Him. He made known unto us, He unfolded to us the true nature of God, His Father, and that He is a God of love, that His love is unconditional, we learned in Matthew 5, where He sends the sun to rise on the evil and the good, and sends the rain on the just and the unjust. Even those who do not believe in Him, He even blesses their lives as well. And we learned in Matthew 7, where Jesus taught that He gives all good things to His children. He never does anything that will cause hurt or harm to their lives. And then we learn in 2 Corinthians chapter 1 verse 3 that He is the Father of mercies and the God of all comfort. And He has this great inner affection for people, and He feels bad, He is hurt when tragic or misfortune yet things happen in their lives, and that He is there to console, to comfort us, and to encourage us. That He brings us near to Him so that He tries His best to alleviate and soothe our pain and endeavoring to heal our hearts, because He is a God of great compassion who has the desire, this great desire to alleviate us from these pains and sufferings and afflictions that happen in our lives. That's His true nature, and certainly there are many other attributes and things that go along with that, but that's what we covered in part 1. Today I want to get into what the true nature of that other spiritual power is. And we're going to learn this in Ephesians 6. But before we get there, I want to remind you of what we covered in 2 Corinthians chapter 3 in a previous teaching, where Jesus came to unveil those things that were hidden in the New Testament, in the Old Testament, that He came to, that we could recognize, that we could understand spiritual realities and truth that were hidden, that were covered up in the Old Testament, were not really recognized. And that's what we're going to see. I believe one of the great significant things and vital things and truths that Jesus Christ unfolded for us and made known to us is that of the other spiritual power. Let's go to Ephesians chapter 6. Ephesians chapter 6, and in verse 10 we'll start. Finally, my brethren, be strong in the Lord and in the power of His might. Verse 11. Put on the whole armor of God, that ye may be able to stand against the wiles of the devil, or the methods, or the strategies, or the schemes or plots of who? The devil. The devil is, we're going to find out, is that other spiritual power. Look here in verse 12. For we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of the darkness of this world, against spiritual wickedness in high places. That's verse 12 here. Part of that verse says, for we wrestle not against flesh and blood. In other words, our conflict, our struggle is not against flesh and blood. Well, flesh and blood, what is that? That's in the natural realm, right? It's the things that we can see, physical things. It's the things that where we get our information from the five senses. That's the flesh and blood. But it says our struggle is not in the natural realm, but it's against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of the darkness of this world, against spiritual wickedness from on high, or spiritual forces of evil in the spiritual realm. That's who our struggle is against. It's in the spiritual realm. Of course, the spiritual realm supersedes the natural realm. That's where our conflict is in. That's what it's talking about. Now, there's there's figures of speech in this verse 12 here that I'd like to make mention to you, but in the E.W. Bullinger's book of figures of speech in the Bible, in this one verse alone, he has 6 different figures of speech that he lists in here. Figures of speech are those things which God wants emphasized. He wants us to pay special attention to. It's like he puts them in bold-faced letters, or he puts them in neon lights. See, all of God's word is important, but sometimes he puts things in figure of speech, and he does it with mathematical exactness and precision when he puts figures of speech in his word, in the Bible, in his word, so that we can really grasp and understand those things. The one figure of speech I want to mention to you here it's called anaphora. It's a repeat of the same word in successive clauses or sentences. And it's this word in verse 12 is against. Let's read this with that in mind here. For we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but in contrast that it's against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of the darkness of this world, against spiritual wickedness in high places. That is what our conflict is in. It's in the spiritual realm. Principalities, meaning it's the highest position of dignitaries of a state. It's those who have high rank in official, high rank or position, like in a government. Like for instance, here in the United States, we have a president, we have a vice president, we have what's called a Secretary of State, we have a Secretary of Defense, and so on. These are high-ranking officials who are heads in certain categories or departments, and they can execute authority and power in those categories. Here, and then it says here, against powers. Powers is delegated authority. In other words, with that power that they have the right to do, the freedom and liberty to do whatever they want. They have the freedom of action, to take actions in those things. So this is the devil. This is the devil. He has like a kingdom. This is what we're learning here. He has a kingdom. Like for instance, in a military sense, he would be the commander-in-chief. And the principalities would be those of like his 5-star general, so to speak, who help him scheme and plot and strategize his methods and what he wants to do. And then he has the powers to exercise. What kind of power does the devil have? What powers are we talking about that he has the freedom to do? Let's look at Luke chapter 4. Luke chapter 4, we're going to find out what power he has and where he got it from. Who gave him this power? Luke chapter 4. And as we're going to read here in Luke chapter 4, it's talking about where Jesus was tempted by the devil 40 days and 40 nights afterward. It says here in verse 5, and the devil taketh him up into an high place, taketh Jesus up into a high mountain, showeth unto him all the kingdoms of the world in a moment of time. All the kingdoms of the world he showed him. Verse 6, and the devil said unto him, Jesus, all this power or authority, it's the same word powers, the delegated authority, will I give thee, and the glory of them, for that is delivered unto me, and to whomsoever I will, I give it. It was delivered unto him. Well, who delivered unto him the kingdoms of the power of this world? Adam did, because Adam had it. God gave it to Adam in Genesis 1:28. It says that Adam had all the power and the dominion over all of God's creation. And it says Adam delivered it unto the devil, who is the serpent in Genesis 3. He delivered it unto him. Wow. Surely something, isn't it? That's how he got it. So where did this devil come from anyway? This serpent. Well, I was a number of years ago, when I first got involved in the Bible and really started learning about the Bible and the things of God and Jesus Christ, I was talking to somebody about the things of God, and he mentioned to me, okay, so God created the heavens and earth and everything in it, then why did he create the devil? And it kind of shook me a little bit. I didn't really know, but I knew that God didn't create the devil, but I didn't really know how to answer that until later on I found out. So I'd like to show you that. Let's find out, well, how did the devil get to be who he is? Isaiah chapter 14. Let's go to Isaiah in the Old Testament. Isaiah 14, it gets Psalms, Proverbs, Ecclesiastes, Song of Solomon, and then you have Isaiah. Isaiah 14. And we'll start in verse 12. Verse 12, it says, How art thou fallen from heaven, O Lucifer, son of the morning? How art thou cut down to the ground, which didst weaken the nations? He fell from heaven. Who is this Lucifer? Lucifer was one of the three archangels, along with Gabriel and Michael. And God created all these spirit beings. These were called holy angels. And each one of them had a third of the angels under them. Lucifer, his name means bearer of light, shining one. Listen to this. He fell from heaven. Listen to that, verse 13. For thou hast said in thine heart, I will ascend into heaven. I will exalt my throne above the stars of God. I will sit also upon the mount of the congregation in the sides of the north. I will ascend above the heights of the clouds. I will be like the Most High. This is what happens. He fell to ground because of his pride and egotism. It says, yet thou shalt be brought down to hell, grave, Sheol, grave, to the sides of the pit. This is what happened to him. He got cast out of heaven because he tried to overthrow God. Look at Ezekiel. We're in Isaiah. It's called Jeremiah, Lamentations, and then Ezekiel. Back a few books here in Ezekiel, we'll see more about this. Here in Ezekiel 28, this Lucifer is called the king of Tyrus, or Tyre. It's figurative language here. Look at this, verse 12. It says, Son of man, take up a lamentations upon the king of Tyrus, or Tyre, and say unto him, Thus saith the Lord God, Thou sealest up the sun, full of wisdom and perfect in beauty. He was full of wisdom and perfect in beauty, this Lucifer. Thou hast been in Eden, the garden of God. Every precious stone was thy covering. And list all these different precious stones, the diamond, the jasper, the emerald, and all these different topaz and so forth. And they were engraved and set in gold. He was brilliant. You can see why he was brilliant. All these precious stones. He was bright. He was shining. He was the shining one. The last part of this verse 13 says, And the workmanship of thy tabrets and of thy pipes were prepared in thee in the day that thou wast created. God created all these spirit beings, and Lucifer he created, and he was one of the most esteemed. He was one of the most glorious and honored of all the angels. And then it goes on and says in verse 14, Thou art the anointed cherubim that covereth. I have set thee so. Who set him? God set him so. And he said here, thou was the holy, upon the holy mountain of God. Thou hast walked up and down the midst of the stones of fire. Thou wast perfect in thy ways from the day thou wast created. He was perfect in his ways. He was blameless before God in all his ways. He loved God with all his heart. He loved God. He did what was pleasing in God's sight. That's what this means. He was perfect in all his ways. And until, verse 15, last part, until iniquity was found in him. Sin was found in him. Look, verse 16. By the multitude of thy merchandise they have filled the midst of thee with violence, and thou hast sinned. Therefore I will cast thee as profane out of the mountain of God, and I will destroy thee, O covering cherubim, from the midst of the stones of fire. Verse 17, thy heart was lifted up or proud because of thy beauty. Thou hast corrupted thy wisdom by reason of thy brightness or splendor. I will cast thee to the ground. I will lay thee before kings, that they may behold thee. Verse 18, thou hast defiled the sanctuaries by the multitude of thine iniquities, by the iniquity of thy traffic or trading. Therefore I will bring forth a fire from the midst of thee, it shall devour thee, and I will bring thee to ashes upon the earth in the sight of all them that behold thee. This is still future, which talks about in the book of Revelation, where he and his cohorts, those spirits who are now called demons, they're unclean spirits, they're evil spirits, are going to be made into ashes. They're going to be thrown into the lake of fire, and they will eventually be destroyed. They will be turned into ashes. This is still future. This is who the devil is. It's now called the devil, who was one time one of the most beautiful angels of all, who was highly esteemed, and he tried to overthrow God, and he got kicked out of heaven as a result of that. And he has many different names now. He's called the devil. He's called Satan. He is called, in Genesis, he is called the serpent. He is called the tempter. And Jesus describes him as the thief in John chapter 10. Let's go to John chapter 10. John, the Gospel of John, and in chapter 10, familiar verse to many of you, it says here, the thief cometh not but for to steal and to kill and to destroy. I am come that they might have life, and that they might have it more abundantly. Jesus is describing the devil as the thief. The thief. A thief is one who comes in by fraud or secretly. Fraud meaning willful deceit or deception or trickery. I think of a pickpocketer, for instance. I don't know if that's really a word or not, but one who goes to pickpocket people, he steals people's wallets, basically. But he does it many times by deceit, because he pretends many times to just bump into a person, and next thing you know, he's got his wallet. And of course, the person who he pickpockets and steals from, he doesn't realize it until he goes to pay for something. And he realizes, I must have forgot my wallet or left my wallet home or whatever. But he no longer has his wallet because his pickpocket stole it. And this is how the devil operates. He many times comes in by stealth. That's what it means by he steals. He comes in to steal. The steal means he comes in by stealth. He has a hidden manner of acting. He has a habit of acting secretly, in other words. This is what he does. He comes in. It's just like a thief. A thief, for instance, will come in to steal somebody's house. Not when they're there, but when they're gone. He tries to sneak in and find a place to get in so he can take their valuables. Not when they're there. It's not like a robber who comes in by force. No, he's like a thief. This is what Jesus is describing him as. And he comes in to steal, and then he comes in to kill. The word kill is the Greek word theo, T-H-U long O. And it means it was used always in the sacrifice of animals. Like they did at Passover. The high priest would sacrifice the shedding of blood of animals for their sins, for the people's sins. It says in 1 Corinthians 5:7 that Jesus is our Passover, and he was sacrificed for us. The word sacrifice is this Greek word, theo. His blood was shed for us so that we could have forgiveness of sins. In Luke, it also talks about in 15, where there was a parable of two sons. One of them wanted his inheritance, and he went out to a faraway land and had riotous living, and he spent it all, his substance, and a famine came, and he was like a pig feeder. He was, because of the famine. And so his life was, he was at a low state. He was like in hog country, so to speak. He came to his senses finally, said, you know what, I'd be better off as a servant in my father's house than I am here. So he went back to his father's house, and his father, seeing him afar off, he had compassion on him, he kissed him, and they killed a fatted calf to celebrate his coming back. And that word, killed that fatted calf, is that word theo. This is amazing to me, because I just see this as the devil who celebrates people a shedding of blood. He relishes when people die. This is just the exact opposite of the one true God, isn't it? Who is love. He's there to comfort. He feels bad when tragic things happen in people. He's there to try to alleviate and soothe people, to give them comfort and consolation. This is what the true God is. This is the exact opposite here of what the devil in his true nature is. And then he comes to destroy. Destroy means he causes to ruin or to cause loss. It's not necessarily of extinction, but of that of eternal salvation. It would be that's how it's used. Loss. He tries to get people so they don't get saved, and then they don't have rewards. He tries to cheat them out of what they should get as a reward and inheritance in the next life. That's what he does. This is who his true nature is. So in the next part, we're going to get into more of who this devil is and what he is and how he operates, so that we can defeat him in our day-by-day living. All right? God bless you. Boy, I don't know. I hope I got that in there. Oh my God. Oh shit.